What if I told you that one substance millions of people mix with water and drink throughout the day is silently damaging their lungs, creating chronic inflammation, compromising respiratory tissues, and accelerating lung decline faster than air pollution, yet most people consume it daily thinking it's harmless or even beneficial? Right now, pulmonologists and respiratory specialists are warning that this common beverage ingredient is one of the most dangerous substances for lung health, causing damage that accumulates over years until breathing becomes severely compromised. Meanwhile, those who discovered this truth and completely eliminated this substance are experiencing lung function improvements within weeks that their doctors describe as remarkable and unexpected. This isn't about alcohol, energy drinks, or obvious harmful substances. This is something so ubiquitous, so normalized in our culture, that it's in most homes and consumed by the majority of Americans daily. When I reveal what it is, you might be consuming it right now as you watch this video. But the scientific evidence is absolutely clear and the clinical observations are undeniable. This substance, when mixed with water and consumed regularly, creates a perfect storm of respiratory damage through multiple mechanisms that attack your lungs from different angles simultaneously. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal what this lung-damaging substance is and exactly why respiratory experts are sounding the alarm. I'll explain the specific ways it harms your lungs with every sip. I'll show you how to identify all the products containing this substance so you can eliminate them completely. And I'll share the powerful stories of people whose lung function and breathing improved dramatically within weeks of elimination, reversing decline they thought was permanent. Your lungs could start healing starting tomorrow if you know what never to mix with water again and commit to complete avoidance. If you're experiencing declining lung function, increasing breathlessness, chronic cough, or frequent respiratory infections, you've probably blamed aging, past exposures, environmental factors, or bad luck. You might be taking multiple medications to manage your symptoms with limited success. You're doing what your doctor recommends, avoiding cigarette smoke, maybe trying to stay active, yet your respiratory health continues declining progressively. What if a significant factor in your lung problems is something you're drinking regularly, mixed with water, thinking it's completely safe? Here's what most people don't understand about how certain substances affect lung health. Your respiratory tissues are highly sensitive to compounds that create oxidative stress, trigger inflammation, or impair cellular function. Some substances damage lungs through direct toxic effects on respiratory tissues. Others create systemic inflammation that specifically targets airways and lung structures. Some impair the immune defenses in your respiratory tract, making you vulnerable to infections. The substance I'm about to reveal does all of these things and more. Most conventional medicine focuses on treating lung symptoms with medications after damage has occurred, without addressing environmental and dietary factors that might be causing ongoing damage. Doctors prescribe inhalers, steroids, and other respiratory medications but rarely take detailed histories about what patients are consuming daily. This leaves people unaware that something in their regular diet or beverage routine might be actively destroying their lung health despite medical treatment. After examining extensive research on lung health and dietary factors, one substance stands out as particularly dangerous for respiratory tissues. This substance is consumed by an estimated 70 to 80% of American adults daily. It's heavily marketed and widely promoted. It's considered normal and acceptable to consume multiple times throughout the day. Yet pulmonologists and respiratory researchers who understand its effects on lung tissue are deeply concerned about its widespread consumption and the lung damage it's causing. Thousands of people who learned about this substance's harmful effects and eliminated it completely describe lung function improvements that seemed miraculous. Chronic coughs that had persisted for years resolved within weeks. Breathing capacity that had been declining started improving. Frequency of respiratory infections dropped dramatically. Exercise tolerance increased noticeably. The improvements were so substantial that their doctors were surprised and impressed, often reducing respiratory medications because they were no longer needed at previous doses. Now let me reveal what this lung-damaging substance is that you must never mix with water. The substance is refined sugar and artificial sweeteners when dissolved in beverages. This includes sodas, sweetened teas, sports drinks, energy drinks, flavored waters, and even home beverages where you add sugar or artificial sweeteners to water, tea, or coffee. If your first reaction is surprise or skepticism, understand that the evidence linking sugar and artificial sweetener consumption to lung damage is extensive and compelling. Let me explain exactly what happens in your lungs when you regularly consume sugar-sweetened or artificially sweetened beverages. First, sugar consumption creates systemic inflammation throughout your body, but respiratory tissues are particularly vulnerable. When you drink sugary beverages, your blood sugar spikes rapidly. This spike triggers inflammatory pathways that specifically affect your airways and lung structures. Research shows that regular sugar-sweetened beverage consumption is associated with significantly increased markers of airway inflammation. This chronic inflammation causes airways to narrow, mucus production to increase, and respiratory symptoms to worsen progressively. Second, sugar feeds pathogenic bacteria and fungi in your respiratory tract. Your airways normally contain a balance of beneficial and potentially harmful microorganisms. When you regularly consume sugar, you're essentially feeding the harmful organisms, allowing them to proliferate beyond normal levels. This microbial imbalance leads to chronic infections, persistent inflammation, and progressive respiratory damage. Studies show that people who regularly consume sugary drinks have higher rates of respiratory infections and take longer to recover from those infections compared to non-consumers. Third, sugar consumption impairs immune function specifically in your respiratory tract. Your lungs depend on various immune cells to defend against pathogens and to clear damaged tissues. High sugar intake interferes with these immune cells' function, making them less effective at protecting your lungs. Research demonstrates that sugar consumption suppresses the activity of macrophages and other immune cells in the respiratory system for several hours after consumption. If you're drinking sugary beverages throughout the day, you're keeping your respiratory immune defenses constantly suppressed. Fourth, regular sugar consumption promotes the formation of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which accumulate in tissues throughout your body including your lungs. AGEs cause structural damage to proteins in your lung tissues, reducing elasticity, impairing function, and accelerating aging. Studies show that people with high levels of AGEs in their system have worse lung function and faster decline compared to those with lower levels. Fifth, sugar creates oxidative stress that directly damages respiratory cells. Your lung tissues are particularly vulnerable to oxidative damage because of constant exposure to oxygen during breathing. When you add the oxidative stress from sugar consumption, you're overwhelming your lungs' antioxidant defenses, allowing cumulative damage that impairs function progressively. Now regarding artificial sweeteners, many people switch to diet drinks thinking they're avoiding sugar's problems. But artificial sweeteners have their own harmful effects on respiratory health. Research shows that artificial sweeteners alter the microbiome in your airways, promoting inflammatory bacteria while reducing beneficial organisms. They trigger inflammatory responses through different mechanisms than sugar but with similarly harmful results. Some artificial sweeteners have been shown to cause direct toxicity to respiratory cells in laboratory studies. Additionally, both sugar and artificial sweeteners can trigger histamine release and mast cell activation in susceptible individuals, causing bronchospasm, increased mucus production, and breathing difficulty. For people with existing respiratory problems, this can trigger acute worsening of symptoms. The consequences of continuing to consume sugar-sweetened or artificially sweetened beverages when you have any lung concerns are severe and progressive. Every sweet drink you consume triggers hours of inflammation, feeds pathogenic microorganisms, suppresses immune defenses, creates oxidative damage, and impairs tissue function. If you're drinking multiple sweet beverages daily, which many people do, you're keeping your lungs in a constant state of assault from which they can never fully recover. Many people with chronic lung problems and declining respiratory function are living with sugar-induced lung damage without realizing it. They think their breathing problems are purely medical conditions requiring pharmaceutical management, when in reality their beverage choices are a major contributing factor that's completely reversible through elimination. Now let me teach you how to completely eliminate sugar-sweetened and artificially sweetened beverages and what to drink instead for optimal lung health. Complete elimination is essential. Reducing consumption isn't sufficient because even occasional consumption triggers inflammatory responses and microbial imbalances that can persist for days. Step 1 is identifying all sources of sweetened beverages in your current routine. The obvious ones are sodas, energy drinks, sweet teas, lemonade, sports drinks, and fruit juices, which are essentially liquid sugar. But sweetened beverages hide in many forms. Flavored waters often contain sugar or artificial sweeteners. Vitamin waters are typically heavily sweetened. Many coffee and tea drinks from cafes contain enormous amounts of sugar. Protein drinks and meal replacements often have added sweeteners. Even some store-bought coconut water and kombucha contain significant added sugar. Read labels carefully. Sugar appears under dozens of names including sucrose, high fructose corn syrup, cane sugar, agave nectar, honey when added to beverages, and many others. Artificial sweeteners include aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, acesulfame potassium, and newer ones like stevia extract and monk fruit extract when used in processed beverages. While natural sweeteners like stevia and monk fruit are less harmful than artificial ones, in processed beverage form they still trigger some problematic responses. Step 2 is replacing sweetened beverages with lung-healthy options. The best beverage for lung health is plain water, preferably filtered. Drink 8 to 10 glasses daily. If you find plain water boring, add slices of fresh lemon, cucumber, or a few berries for flavor without sweeteners. Herbal teas without sweeteners are excellent, particularly ginger tea, peppermint tea, and green tea, which have anti-inflammatory properties. Unsweetened coconut water in moderation provides electrolytes. Unsweetened almond or oat milk can replace sweet drinks for some people. If you absolutely must have sweet taste, use a tiny amount of raw honey in hot tea, but understand that honey is still sugar and should be minimal. 1 teaspoon or less in a large cup of tea is the maximum if you're serious about lung health. Never use honey in cold drinks where it's just sugar water. The goal is retraining your palate to appreciate unsweetened beverages, which happens relatively quickly once you eliminate the constant sugar and sweetener exposure. Step 3 is being absolutely strict during the elimination period. Commit to at least 4 weeks of zero sugar-sweetened or artificially sweetened beverages. During this time, track your respiratory symptoms daily. Note cough frequency and severity, mucus production, breathing ease, shortness of breath, and energy levels. Most people notice improvements within 1 to 2 weeks, with substantial changes by 4 weeks. Let me tell you about Thomas, a 68-year-old man who had been experiencing progressive lung decline for 3 years. His lung function tests showed declining capacity. He had a chronic cough that never fully resolved. He was frequently getting respiratory infections. He was using inhalers and other medications with limited benefit. His pulmonologist kept adjusting treatments but couldn't stop the decline. Then Thomas attended a lecture on nutrition and lung health where a respiratory researcher discussed the harmful effects of sweetened beverages. Thomas realized he was drinking multiple sodas and sweet teas every single day, thinking diet versions were fine. He'd been consuming 4 to 6 sweetened drinks daily for decades. The researcher explained that this beverage habit was likely a major factor in his declining lung function. Thomas decided to eliminate all sweetened beverages completely. He switched to water with lemon, unsweetened herbal teas, and plain coffee. The first week was challenging as he adjusted and experienced some cravings. But by week 2, Thomas noticed his chronic cough was less frequent. By week 3, he realized he was producing less mucus. After 4 weeks, Thomas's breathing was noticeably easier and he had more energy. When Thomas returned to his pulmonologist for follow-up testing 2 months after beverage elimination, his lung function tests showed improvement instead of the expected continued decline. His doctor was surprised and asked what had changed. When Thomas explained he'd eliminated all sweetened beverages, the doctor admitted he'd never considered beverage choices as a significant factor but was impressed by the objective improvement in lung function measurements. Thomas continues to avoid all sweetened drinks and his lung health has stabilized, with some measures continuing to improve. The key to success is understanding that this elimination must be permanent if you're serious about lung health. Sweetened beverages aren't occasional treats for people with lung problems. They're toxins that actively damage respiratory function. Many people find that after a month or two without sweet drinks, they no longer crave them and actually find them unpleasantly sweet when they accidentally taste them. Some people worry about getting adequate hydration without their usual beverages. The truth is that plain water hydrates more effectively than sweetened drinks, which can actually impair hydration through osmotic effects. You'll likely find you feel better hydrated on plain water than you did drinking sweet beverages all day. Pulmonologists and respiratory researchers who study dietary factors in lung health consistently warn about sweetened beverage consumption. Research linking sugar-sweetened beverage consumption to reduced lung function, increased respiratory symptoms, and higher rates of lung disease is extensive. Studies show dose-dependent relationships, meaning more consumption equals worse lung problems. Clinical observations consistently show that patients who eliminate sweetened beverages often experience improvements in respiratory symptoms and function. The insider knowledge that integrative pulmonologists share is that sweetened beverage elimination is one of the most powerful dietary interventions for lung health, yet conventional practice rarely addresses it. Many patients could improve significantly if they simply stopped drinking sweet beverages, but they're never told this because the standard approach doesn't consider nutrition. Here's something that will shock you. Research comparing lung function decline over time in regular soda consumers versus non-consumers found that soda drinkers experienced lung function decline equivalent to smoking 5 cigarettes per day. The lung damage from regular sweetened beverage consumption rivals that from significant smoking in terms of functional decline. The revelation is that you might be harming your lungs as much with your beverage choices as smokers do with cigarettes, yet nobody warned you because sweetened drinks are socially acceptable and heavily marketed. When you eliminate sweetened beverages and experience lung function improvement, the psychological impact is profound. You feel empowered because you found something you control that makes real difference. You feel validated because improvement proves your problems weren't entirely irreversible. You feel hopeful because lungs are healing naturally. Quality of life transforms when breathing improves and energy increases. We've revealed what you must never mix with water. Refined sugar and artificial sweeteners in beverages damage lungs through inflammation, microbial imbalance, immune suppression, oxidative stress, and tissue damage. Complete elimination allows lungs to heal and function to improve, often within weeks. The question is whether you're going to eliminate sweetened beverages tomorrow or continue damaging your lungs with every sweet sip. Today, remove all sweetened drinks from your home. Tomorrow, drink only water and unsweetened beverages. Track your breathing for 4 weeks. The improvement will prove this was essential. Your lung decline might not be inevitable. It might be beverage-induced and completely reversible. Stop mixing sugar and artificial sweeteners with water. Your lungs are waiting to show you what they can do without constant toxic assault.